I can tell you this, in Florida, girls are going to play girls sports and boys are going to play boys sports. That's what we're doing, and we're going to make sure that that's the reality.
And today, the city of West Palm Beach is showing its pride.
We had a request from one of our council members to do a proclamation recognizing Gay Pride Month. The month of June is Gay Pride Month. I didn't feel comfortable signing that proclamation.
All right, lots to unpack right there in those last three sound bites, and we will get to it. My name's T.A. Walker from WPTV NewsChannel 5 and Fox 29.
And I'm Josh Navarro, also from WPTV and the Fox 29 News.
Now, welcome to our live conversation about understanding LGBTQI issues. June is the beginning of Gay Pride Month, and already we have several news stories affecting the community.
That's right. From transgender girls being banned from female sports in Florida. That was the legislation that was recently signed by Governor Ron DeSantis, to the Okeechobee Council voted against recognizing Pride Month. You saw a soundbite in there, and also vetoing funding for Pulse nightclub victims, mental health assistance. We're all going to dive into all those issues in just moments away.
Yeah, and it's not all bad news for the community. There's victories to celebrate all across the viewing area, including downtown Clematis Street. They have the new Pride fountain display going on. They also have that crosswalk that you saw in the opening. And Palm Beach Pride Market is happening tomorrow in Lake Worth Beach. And Pride murals are being installed as we speak in Delray Beach and Boynton Beach. And also, Palm Tran has decided to come up with this Ride with Pride vehicle. Julie sent this to me earlier today. Let me bring in Julie. Julie, hi, how are you? She's from Compass in Lake Worth Beach. How are you?
Great to see everybody. I love the pride colors in our picture frame.
Now, when you sent me this photo this morning, what were you thinking when you saw it?
I was like, have you ever seen anything so fabulous on a huge bus before? Public transportation. We've come a long way.
We got our first comment. Andy Michael says trans girls are girls, and we're going to get into that, Andy, in just a moment. But first, I want to bring in Nikki from WRMF, 97.9 WRMF, from our partner station. Hi, Nikki. How are you?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. Welcome to the community. Number one, you just got here a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, a little bit before the pandemic, so I still feel very new.
Right.
And I have not done a Pride here yet, so I'm excited to see what goes down this weekend.
I want to bring in Reverend Marie Alfred Harkley. How are you?
I am good, Alfred Harkey, and I am well, thank you. Like Nikki, I have been here since just before the pandemic, so I feel kind of new too.
And you're the pastor at the Metropolitan Community Church of the Palm Beaches and Palm Beach Gardens, right?
That's right.
Awesome. And then our last guest, Josh, I'm going to let you say his name so I don't mess that one up.
Rolando Chang Barrero, the owner of the Box Gallery and a community activist, as well as some other titles that I'm sure he can let us know about.
Thank you for having me on with you all.
So I really wanted to do some unpacking of some questions that I think the entire viewing area might have on LGBTQI issues. And I want to do that with Julie because there's all these letters that are being added on to our acronym. And I wanted you to maybe help explain what all these letters mean. So I think most of us know LGBT, but you want to briefly run through those?
Right. So I kind of got a giggle when Alphabet Mafia came across the screen here because I personally think it's really fun, but I did not recognize that there are some people that might find it a little controversial, kind of demonizing non-heteronormative people. But, you know, if you're going to give me like a rank or a title, like I would like to be general or brigadier or lieutenant lesbian.
So let's go on to the ones that are kind of newer. And why don't you explain what those mean? What is the difference between gay and queer?
So gay, we used to use gay as the umbrella term for the whole community. But because we're all extra and we like to feel special, the new umbrella term is queer. Most of the millennials and younger generations have reclaimed the power of the word queer. They're loud, they're proud, they're queer, and they definitely have no issues with the word. For some of our older generations of lesbians and gays and bisexuals, that term means strange, off-putting, still sometimes revered as a negative connotation. And so I'll just give the advice what the kids tell us. If queer's not your word, then you don't get to use it.
There you go. And then Q could also mean questioning, right?
That's right. So for a long time, I think LGBTQ, when we stopped right there, Q did mean questioning, and it can still mean questioning.
And then intersex, that's a new one for me. What does that exactly mean?
So the former term was hermaphrodite.
Oh, gotcha.
And that is considered a negative terminology. The better, more medical term is intersex. That means that a person is born with both male and female parts, most of the time not always visible, internal organs, things like that. And so a lot of times folks have experiencing gender dysphoria when they are born as an intersex person because the parents or the doctor label them one gender on their birth certificate, but they have hormones, you know, from opposite sex or both sexes raging through their bodies. And so we all understand that gender identity is up here.
Yes. And so then asexual can also, the A can also stand for ally, right?
Yes, it can. I think there's a couple of A's now, so that we have our asexual folks included, where physical sexual relations is not as important as the person. And so the A is also our allies, because we couldn't do the things that we do without all of our straight allies. And we have a lot of them here in Palm Beach County.
Absolutely. So now here's the thing I really want to get into, because I think the pronoun explainer that everybody's hearing often the, different conversations about he, her, she, him, he, what is all that, and why is that becoming a thing now?
So we've been using pronouns for quite a long time. There's over 100 pronouns, and pronouns are important. Don't you think so, ma'am?
I do. But for example, our company sent out an email, and one of the gentlemen that's at the top said he, at his email signature, he put he, him in parentheses after his name. So you're starting to see it more and more in pop culture. Mainstream.
Well, yeah, and for the most part, millennials are more than twice as likely to identify as LGBTQ at a rate of about 20% higher than previous generations. And so we can utilize pronouns on our name tags and at the bottom of our email signatures to normalize letting people know that we are inclusive and affirming of all people's genders, and what that would really mean for a new employee that may be transgender. So we can use gender expansive pronouns without too much pushback. Those are some things that you can do, is by respecting people's pronouns and respecting their gender identities, by just utilizing the pronouns that they wish you to use.
All right. Thanks, Julie. I want to kind of get into the news of the week. Josh, do you want to take us through the first story?
Yeah, so this week we had Governor Ron DeSantis sign SB 1028, which is creating the Fairness in Women's Sports Act, which will only allow females who were born of that sex to play in women's sports. Again, let's try to listen in on what the governor had to say when he made that announcement.
First of all, it's not a message to anything other than saying we're going to protect fairness in women's sports. We believe that it's important to have integrity in the competition, and we think it's important that they're able to compete on a level playing field. And you've seen what's happened when you don't have that.
And of course, we do have a heavy Republican conservative viewing and viewers, and especially here in Florida. But I just want to just elaborate just a little bit, Julie, as far as your first reaction when you heard about that.
Yeah, I see a lot of angry squares. It looks like an angry Brady Bunch right now.
Yeah. So, Julie, do you want to make any comments as far as like trying to, I guess, open our minds and trying to see, what is beyond what everyone else is thinking versus our own experiences or your own experiences within this topic?
Yeah, this one is a lot to unpack. It made me really angry. This is just cruel legislation creating an issue where one doesn't exist. I don't understand what the issue is. I had someone call wanting to speak to a transgender female athlete that is dominating at the top of her sports amongst her other cisgender female teammates. Couldn't come up with a name because this is a non-issue. Can somebody else please take this for me? Thanks.
Reverend?
I was pretty angry too that happened on the first day of Pride. It seemed really like a slap in the face to all of us in the queer community.
Let me ask you that. Do you think that was done on purpose, or do you think it was just what was coming on the governor's desk?
Julie, I don't know about you. I think it was very intentional. I mean,
oh yes.
Yeah, I feel like this governor doesn't do anything without knowing how he's harming folks. Yeah. So, and I think that for me, one of the things that's been really sad to hear is how it's impacting folks in my congregation who are having to hear their identities debated as if there's some sort of issue rather than human beings. It's just painful. And as Julie said, it's useless. There's creating an issue where no issue exists as a dog whistle to whoever the governor is trying to attract in this way. And it's certainly not the LGBTQIA community.
What do you think, Nikki?
Well, first of all, I support obviously everybody in our community, every human being, period. But I do think that was just a very cold kind of slap in the face. Just a yes and no, black and white, boom, done. I think there's a lot of factors that should be discussed because people are not aware of certain things. They're not educated in the entire debate. I mean, there's so many factors. Like, for example, when you're a professional athlete, you cannot take, certain steroids and things like that. I mean, this is a very layered topic that I don't have answers to. And maybe some of the other panel has better answers than I can give with this. But I do know that there's layered there's just so many layers to it. And I try to be devil's advocate for somebody who has such a black and white answer. I try to see, okay, so let's, like you said, unpack this. Let's see what is this issue that and deal with every issue as they see it and try to discuss every particular issue. Because it's not just, oh, well, they were born a man, so they can't play on a female team. That's not the only issue here. There's more layers to it.
Rolando?
There's a lot of sports. There's wrestling, there's boxing, there's judo, there's karate, that is based on weight class and body mass, muscle mass. And I don't think that we've looked at enough solutions and alternatives to even larger cisgender women with petite women.
Well, exactly.
I'm not even getting into the trans issue. I think that a very large, muscular teenager that's 13 shouldn't be on the same team with a 12-year-old that weighs 40 pounds. It gives the teenager an unfair advantage on the same team. That's why we break them up in years based on growth, by classes, you know what I'm saying? And as a man who was very small and couldn't compete in the boys team, I would have loved, I'm cisgender, and I would have loved to have been on a team where it was based on body mass or size. That's why I went to judo.
Makes sense. Andy says to
So
all.
is it, I'm sorry.
Andy Michael says to all trans and non-binary people, we hear you, we see you, we got your backs. So this comment from Andy. What do you guys say to the question of, well, this person was born a female and are male, and now they are just naturally bigger human beings. They shouldn't be on this female team. What do you say to that?
That is not necessarily true in any case. And no matter which way, you're going to look for an exception that fits that comment. But that is not the norm.
It's not.
I'm sorry. I do want to read a statement from the governor saying when he signed this, he says, as a father of 2 daughters, I want my girls and every girl in Florida to compete on an even playing field for the opportunities available to young women in sports. Women have fought for decades to have equal opportunities in athletics, that is, and we have to prevent those opportunities from being eroded as is happening in other states. It's common sense. It reads in part. Any thoughts on that?
The thing is, everybody wants to agree with that every girl should have equal footing. What he fails to acknowledge is that a trans woman is a woman. A trans girl is a girl.
There it is.
And what we're doing is we're creating hate and singling out, introducing separateness in our school. It was the same thing with the gender-neutral bathroom. I grew up in a house where we had one bathroom. Everybody used it. There was no problem. In my house, we didn't have boy bathroom and girl bathroom. We had a bathroom, we had a door, we had a lock. If you didn't want somebody walking in, you'd lock the door.
I think the main issue is
we're making issues.
it's about our young girls.
Yes.
I think it's about our young girls in the high schools and middle schools. This is a huge issue in that people are confusing gender identity with sexuality. And if you could see the little transgender girls that come in here with their families in the center for our different various groups, you would know right away that those little girls do not belong on a boys' team and they do not belong in a boys' bathroom. End of story.
All right, let's go ahead.
I was just going to point out that part of what's happening with these bills is they're being promulgated by one group and they're being written into law or being tried to be written into law all over the country. And it really is just about divisiveness and nothing else. It's not about solving any kind of problem that exists.
Josh, let's move on to the next topic.
All right, the Okeechobee Council over there vetoed to recognize Pride Month. We had our colleague Derek Lowe cover this story yesterday. Many of them voted because it's the way that their constituents think, and they voted for their constituents. What do you guys think as far as trying to have, go ahead.
Let's play the clip first, just in case they didn't. Is that okay?
We had a request from one of our council members to do a proclamation recognizing Gay Pride Month. The month of June is Gay Pride Month. I didn't feel comfortable signing that proclamation. The mayor issued, in the city of Okeechobee, the mayor issues all proclamations. Because of the controversial nature of the proclamation, and because of some of my religious beliefs, I did not feel comfortable signing the proclamation. So we put it on the agenda for the council to make the decision if the city wanted to make that proclamation. Well, Okeechobee is a very conservative, extremely conservative community and a very Christian community. So a lot of people have very strong Christian beliefs and just do not support that type of proclamation. So there was overwhelming turnout not to pass the proclamation. So, and I think the majority of our community probably feels that way. It's nothing against any person or group of people. It's just the idea of what it represents.
He just contradicted himself.
Word.
Every other word, contradiction.
I have so many feelings. Sorry.
Reverend Murray, what do you think about it? Since he did mention about the faith-based community, you know, and all in his comments over there.
It just infuriates me when people speak as if being Christian and being queer are two things that can't happen together. Because I got to tell you, I got a church full of people that would tell you differently. I have a denomination full of people all over the world that would tell you differently. Even outside of my own denomination, which was founded by and for the queer community, there are literally millions of queer Christians. So this notion that we're voting this way because of our religious beliefs, it doesn't hold water. We celebrate Pride Month because of our religious beliefs, because the Jesus that I follow teaches me that we love everyone, that is the main command we are given, to love our neighbors as ourselves. It is called having respect for other people. Thank you. And, you know, we don't need a proclamation. It's Pride Month. Like, you don't have to sign it. We're going to be here. It's going to be Pride Month, and lots of us are going to be Christians celebrating Pride Month in our churches. So that argument it makes my blood boil. And it's also part of the reason why so many young people think that they can't be both religious and queer. And it's really nice that, especially here in Palm Beach County, we're able to do a lot to debunk that myth.
Nikki, what do you say?
Separation of church and state. And everything that she said was just completely on point. There are gay and lesbian and LGBTQ, everything in every single religion, in every country. It's not something that somebody chooses. And that's kind of, I think, a mindset where that comes from. Like, oh, you could just turn it off. That doesn't happen. And I think that a lot of people that use that don't understand it.
Is there any way to bridge the idea of what Gay Pride Month is, or having a gay proclamation in a heavy conservative area? You know, we're starting to see people have their relatives or have their children be LGBTQIA, but are living in heavy conservative parts of the world, parts of the country. How is there any type of bridge or an understanding that both people can agree on or come to an understanding?
The only way that's going to happen is if we start learning to talk to each other and lose each other's commitment to be right and making the other person wrong. And I talk to a lot of conservative friends of mine that they straight out tell me, I don't like this. And once I talk to them and I accept that they may think differently because they were raised differently, that I would never circumvent their belief system. And basically it's let's agree to disagree, but don't hurt me. And that has worked fairly well, but that means that we have to go out of our way to talk to people all the time, because a lot of this is based on fear. And if they have a relationship with you, they don't fear you. And therein lies part of the solution, the beginning of a conversation. It's only been 40 years when people spit on my face because I had a sign that said, "Keep my lover alive." And then eventually I had a sign that said, "My lover died." And we're not there anymore. But we still have a long way to go, and we can't forget that.
I want to bring in the Reverend on something. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church in Texas, and then I went to Southwest Baptist University in Bolivar, Missouri. And the mental health work I needed to do, because I was a gay person in a suppressive environment, was immense. It took many, many years. In your congregation, do you see a lot of mental health issues because of religion and their identity?
I'm going to let Julie talk to this too, because you could see her face. She definitely does. But yes, we absolutely do. Almost every person in my congregation can tell you a story of where they were before, church-wise, how they were treated badly. We get newcomers all the time who will say, wow, I had no idea that I could be in a church that accepted all of me. So those stories are really, really common, and they do cause mental health issues. And I bet Julie knows the stats on this. I think I just quoted this on Facebook today, so I think I've got it right, that having one supportive adult in the home decreases the risk of LGBTQ kids committing suicide by 40%. And I think when Roland talks about having this discussion across differences, I think one of the things we can do is talk about our shared values. And our shared values are, let's keep our kids alive. Let's do that. Let's support our kids. And I think Julie probably has more in the way of like numbers and mental health stuff, mental health crises around this.
Yeah, I think that you're right, Reverend Marie, because for the most part, when it comes to statistics, does it really matter? If we save just one, then we did our job, right?
Yes.
So I think that mental health issues, depression, especially around gender identity issues or coming out challenges, that's the reason why we've had support groups for so long here at the center, because people do have religious, expectations, cultural expectations, all of the different intersectionalities that we all live on. I can be a lesbian Jewish woman. I can be a gay male Christian. There's so many different religions and faith-based organizations. We are so lucky here in Palm Beach County. We have so many LGBTQ affirming churches and synagogues that I feel terrible for the folks in Okeechobee, because there are LGBT people living in Okeechobee. Was it a surprising response? No. Disappointing, yes, but not surprising.
I want to circle back to my church. There's a gentleman that's my age. I'm 44, and he had a wife and a kid, still does, ex-wife now, but he just came out. I think about being 44 and suppressing that feeling from your teenage years all the way to now, and now having the sense of release. I think we could do better to communicate with our kids and blend in religion, especially when the religion teaches love, right? It teaches love and acceptance. And Jesus was hanging out in the Christian sense with some of the seedier people in town, right?
He hung out with sex workers. He hung out with tax collectors. He hung out with everybody. And that's sort of the point, right? And I just want to say that what you experienced and what so many people have experienced is religious trauma. I mean, that's a thing that is pretty well documented in the queer community, and that most of us who have experienced it have to have some mental health help to get through, which is a great thing that we have that available.
Well, I didn't have it available. So what I did was I took every elective as a psychology class.
Brilliant.
If I get a sociology class and it's 3 hours, I'll have a Bachelor of Science in Psychology.
Perfect.
Come work for us. Come work for us, TA.
Oh my gosh.
Julie,
Yes.
remember that earlier this month we contacted you because we were doing the heroin opioid spoon project at the gallery, and they connected me with Vasilia, and she made a really interesting thing about because the conversation was about isolation and during the quarantine and the uptick in suicides because of the lack of identification of abuse, depression from teachers with their students because their students weren't there, women in the workplace, men in the workplace that you could identify as being abused or see their mental capacity diminish. That wasn't happening. So we have an exponential amount of growth in the mental health area in our community, which is largely since we're just opening up our economy and people are starting to come back out, it is now that we're going to be noticing a lot of the uptick, more so, I think.
Thank you, Rolando. I want to move in naturally into this next story, Josh.
Yeah, so speaking on the topic of mental health, this week, Governor DeSantis used a line item veto to cut funds from $150,000 that would have funded programs for mental health services for the Pulse survivors that shooting that happened about 5 years ago. And this is on the heels of the 5-year anniversary. Just thoughts on that. He claimed, the governor said that it would, there's a lot of people that have been claiming, they suffer from mental health, but weren't actually part or aren't victims of this shooting. So just want to touch base with Julie again, as far as your thoughts on that, and how do we, move forward or navigate as far as providing those support services for the people who are still traumatized from that night.
Okay, how do we move forward? A lot to unpack here. So let's all just remember that we all have our exercise and our rights to vote, and that before the 2019 remembrance ceremony, I believe that our governor stood on the ground and the steps of Pulse Orlando and promised us all that he would always support us who were impacted by the Pulse nightclub shooting. And 2 years later, or 5 years later to the date, he vetoes mental health services. We won't forget. We won't.
Anybody else have anything to say on this?
That goes back to the same thing. During this quarantine, people came into the quarantine last year dealing with a lot of mental health and a lot of trauma. And it's just gone exponential. And this is seriously a hard blow on people that have trauma from that particular shooting that was left in limbo because they couldn't continue with their treatments.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that shooting mostly impacted the Latinx community. So not only, we're just heaping sort of marginalization upon marginalization and saying, no, we're not going to take care of the mental health of these people who did experience something that I can't even imagine the trauma. And that doesn't just go away because it's 5 years later.
Yeah, June 12th is the 5th anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting. If you don't remember that, that's when a lone gunman went into a nightclub and started taking out people in the gay nightclub. I tried to get some of our local bar owners on to talk about this 5th anniversary, and they don't even want to talk about it. They're terrified that this event or an event like it would happen again. They're fearful from it.
That's a real fear.
Yeah.
We all had that fear. I lost a lot of volunteers that used to greet all of our visitors here at the LGBT Center. I lost a lot of volunteers that week because they were so afraid that it could happen to any one of us. So I don't blame the bar owners. That was a traumatic experience, and sometimes it feels like 5 minutes ago.
And I know that my church, even though I wasn't here yet, I know that they put in place all kinds of safety precautions and procedures after that happened, because I think all of us who were gathering in community anywhere felt far more targeted than we probably ever had.
We did a major phone tree and assessment of security before we even went to the vigils. And we started calling Compass and finding out, is there going to be a vigil? Is it safe? There was one in Lake Worth. There was one in Rosemary Square. Some people chose to go to Lake Worth over Rosemary Square because the shooter had been recognized as being in Rosemary Square, and nobody was sure. And that is very unsettling, that you cannot be sure that there wasn't a plan to do something there as an aftermath, that the first shooting was a call to round up people in one place, knowing that we always bind together. So it was scared. This is a project that I did on the 1st year anniversary. One bird representing everybody that was deceased, and one bird representing everybody that had survived. We got to put their toe tags. That's the South Florida Daily News, which we used the epitaphs for people to honor all their friends, because Orlando's not that far. And we have relationships with a lot of the people who passed.
Yeah.
And I knew that. And this was more of for a cathartic release 1 year later, to know that we haven't forgotten them. And this will again happen in about a week. I will redo it again, as I do every year. And we'll move forward. Every year, less and less people come out, and that's okay as long as one person comes out, and the picture reaches Orlando. I am happy to know that they're still remembered in this town.
You know, something else that was very traumatic about that is there was a lot of confusion, and we were receiving phone calls left and right in the morning because I believe the city of Orlando had lifted the long-term ban on accepting blood from gay men or men who have sex with men. And people just wanted to give blood. They were asking all over the state of Florida, please give blood. We need blood. And there was so much confusion around that. And again, just absolutely wanting to help community members. You know, I was there with coworkers, mostly female coworkers, because I don't understand. I just don't understand why there is this ban still.
Julie, why don't you let's unpack that a little bit, because most people don't. I said this in the newsroom the other day because this one place kept sending an email every week because they're having a blood drive. And I finally, after, getting this in my inbox, because I'm not allowed to donate blood because I'm a gay male, I finally just said, could you please take me off your list for this? You're a perfectly nice person, but really week after week of getting this, hey, everybody, we need blood, but not yours, felt a little bad. Rolando, this stems back from the last pandemic we had, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How I said, it's no coincidence that we're not allowed to give blood to each other. It's no coincidence that the announcement was made the 1st of June. It is to steal talking points, and it's to steal our celebration. Anything that's possible for us. And it's not a conspiracy theory, and it's not that I'm jaded, bitter, and crass or anything like that. It is, this will keep us alive. And we're not allowed.
It's stigma. It's stigma all over.
We want to celebrate our life. We can't, because they want to steal the headlines on June 1st. We want to do a parade tomorrow. And I remember the year before last, you had the pastor saying, go into the parades and you stand your ground. And that stole the headlines. So these groups are really focused, and then they get ground. I ended up getting hepatitis C when I went into the hospital for brain surgery, for God's sakes. They didn't stop straight people from giving blood. And I had, as well as dealing with brain cancer, I had to deal with hepatitis C because I got tainted blood. And that was after the AIDS pandemic. So that means that the blood wasn't even screened for Hep C. Mm-hmm. So let's get it together. These are BS attempts just to single us out once again.
Josh, what's next?
All right, so let's switch gears here and talk about the flight of gays of color. I want to bring in Reverend Marie Alford Harkey on this topic. It just, in general, it just seems that it's a little bit harder for the LGBTQIA, especially people of color, because we do come from, as Latinos, come from conservative ideas, and religion comes into play as well in the African American community. Talk to me about some of the challenges that you've experienced as far as hearing from people of your congregation on that topic?
Yeah, as a middle-aged white queer cisgender woman, I don't want to speak too much on this topic, but I will say that for my folks of color in my congregation, and especially the Black folks in my congregation, it is a very different journey coming out as queer. My wife is also a Black woman, and her journey, she's in a different tradition. She's an Episcopalian, and her journey has also been very different. I think in some traditions, it's about sort of dragging folks along behind you, kicking and screaming, to understand the intersectionality of your identity as both a queer person and a person of color. And I think in other places, it's a matter of, and this has happened in MCC numerous times, of getting the tradition to respect your Black religious tradition as well. And as an MCC congregation, all of our folks come from somewhere else. You know, almost all of our folks. We do now have people who were born into MCC, which is lovely. But most of our folks come from another tradition. And so one of the things that's really important for us is to honor those traditions and pay attention to those intersections in our community as we also continue to push forward on our LGBTQ agenda. So it can never be just one thing. And I think that's what we as a community really believe. It's never one part of a person's identity. We believe that our bodies are sacred and holy, and that's every bit of our bodies.
Rolando, do you have anything to say on this topic, since coming from a Latino background? You know, some of our parents are old school, very, very, very old school. So, you know, coming out or being part of the LGBTQIA community can be a bit challenging in some families.
I came out very early, and I was invited to leave my house very early. And I was basically raised by drag queens and bartenders. And last year sometime, I actually called Julie and asked her, is unity in the community a declaratory statement or an interrogatory statement? And we should decide at some point to deal with this, because there's a lot of conversation about our history being rewritten or whitewashed. And I respect a lot of the white privileged gay men that helped us write our history, that helped get our name out in the media, that gave us the connection. I also am very grateful to the women. And I think that right now, a lot of the people of color are seeking, mostly people of color that are trans, that may not even look like they're people of color, just because their intersectionality makes them white Hispanics. There are such things. Blonde Hispanics.
I want to give some context for people, the broader audience, about what we're talking about, really. The last person I dated was a Hispanic man, and his grandmother was having a 100th birthday party, and I was asked to come at the end of the night and to have dinner with the mom and dad and the cousin. But I had to wait in my car for other family members to leave the house before I was allowed to go in, not because I'm white, because they can't admit to their other family members that their son is gay. And it's those sort of
vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's not necessarily Hispanic or Black for the most part. I'm more worried that we fail to acknowledge, because we get defensive, that our community mirrors the larger cisgender straight community. Because we practice loving people of the same sex doesn't mean that we didn't bring all our cultural baggage that we were raised with, and our imprints, and our religious bigotry, our racism, our classism, our hate into our community. And until we look at it and step back and not get defensive and try to protect it, we're not going to get anywhere. And we won't be able to lead by example.
Rolando, you're sort of touching on something that Nikki talked to me about yesterday. Nikki, what you want to talk about the history of the LGBTQIA movement and younger people, right?
Yeah, I feel like younger people coming up just see the rainbow, they see the party, and which is wonderful, but it wasn't always like that. And they don't know who Harvey Milk is. They don't know what Ellen did on the cover of Time magazine. How, yep, I'm gay. I feel like that right there was such kick the door down for just the world. You know, that there's so many of those instances that younger generation just has no idea. They just have no idea. But I also think that there's ways to educate, and not. There are actually some states in America that require schools to teach a history of the LGBTQIA. In there, like California, New Jersey, Illinois. I came here from Chicago, so I'm proud of that. You know, that's in just the general schools, so people are learning certain histories. But today's kids, they'll watch a movie or they'll watch a documentary, and there's a lot of those out there that they just don't know about. And I think it's up to people in the older generation to school them.
Well, or if you were like me and you're in an area where you have no information, there was no internet at the time. Josh, don't look at me like that. There's no way to look up the information.
I grew up at that time era too. I'm like right behind CPA.
And so, you know what? Nikki reminded me yesterday. Yes, I saw Ellen in the news say I'm gay in Time magazine. And then right when I went to college, I started hearing ads for Queer Eye for the Straight Guy on the radio. Will and Grace came into like this huge success, and it felt like it started normalizing. And by the time I got out of college and I got my first job here in the Palm Beaches at 1290 WJNO and then Cool 105.5, I was like, oh, I have to come out again, because here's a new community, and I didn't know how to do it. So I remembered Ellen, and I thought, well, let's just get them to laugh first. And so on the morning show on Mo and Sally, I just made them laugh, and I used pronouns like I went on a date with them last night. They were cool. I didn't really like that one, you know, and then eventually started letting he's and hims slip in. So by the time of my 11-year run there, everybody knew I was gay and nobody had a problem with it. And I just really appreciated that journey. And I was talking to your colleague, Nikki, Jennifer Ross, and she used to be co-host with In the Closet Gay Man, Kevin Kitchens, back in the day. But it was an honor to get to be the first gay man on the air in the Palm Beaches. So, you know, it's just everybody has their own stories and their own perspectives and their own plight through this journey, because they're all so different.
Yeah. I used to work with
matters.
Yeah.
It does.
I used to work with an older gentleman that was clearly a gay man, but you know, he was so closeted his whole life because he was part of that older generation, that it's just so difficult for him. You can see what's going on behind his eyes and how hard it is, and that he had to fake it for so long, and he had to put on a facade and be somebody he was not for so many years, and that is really hard to peel off. That's really hard to peel off.
Yeah.
It would be even harder for us to have to witness the bashing and the siding with the other side in order to maintain that closetedness. And that created a predicament for us. Do we out them and stop the abuse?
Right.
Or do we understand them? Which is a lot of the issue with the youth now. They don't know their history, but we fought so that they wouldn't have to be confronted with any of those things. I want them to walk hand in hand and dream of unicorns and not worry so much. Yes, to expose them and to invite them to learn their history, but not to make them wrong. It is my deepest desire, and I was on a lot of the front lines in Chicago with Danny Sotomayor, and I don't know if you know the whole ACT UP history.
Danny Sotomayor, yeah.
We were there together, and we would getting spit on and getting bottles thrown at us and everything. I don't want these kids to be marred by that. I want them to call me a troll, and I don't want to get insulted. A troll is, by the way, a man that may be over 30 years old to most of the gay community.
I'm really grateful to the youngins, the young people.
Yeah.
Because they are leading us in ways that I don't think we could have envisioned back when we were just grateful to hear Ellen say, "I'm gay" on television, right? And those moments are important. And I also think that we're starting to do some really good education around our history. That Pride documentary that was on, that like 5 or 6 part documentary was really, really great. And I think a lot of folks were watching it, not just folks in our generation. And I think that, paying attention to where the youth are leading us right now is really important, because they're taking us so far beyond anything we could have imagined, anything we could have hoped for. And they have so many hopes and dreams that are not just unicorns and rainbows, that are really about justice seeking in the world, way beyond anything that we thought about when maybe some of us were just thinking about marriage equality, for example, or whatever else was happening. So we're being led in some really, really important ways by young people.
It makes me uncomfortable.
Let me correct some.
No, my turn. You can move on. My turn. I
don't want it to linger that I want people that I'm calling them unicorns and rainbows. I don't want them to lose their youth like we did.
Oh, right. No, I didn't take it as bad. No, I heard you. No. I heard your concern.
And what I was going to say is they're so out with it and so free with it. I get uncomfortable. Like, I'm like, why am I so uncomfortable with them being like me, like I should be, like walking down the street? We skipped over a topic just because of the flow. So Josh, this is the next topic we have.
All right, with Reverend Maria again, LGBTQIA and religion. I think we touched a little bit about this when we were talking about the Okeechobee Council over there not recognizing Pride Month. It's a really tough topic.
Don't do it.
Because I also as well grew up in a very religious background, Pentecostal. So when I was growing up and knew my identity or my sexual orientation, it was traumatizing, because I was like pray the gay away. I was praying the gay away every time.
Doesn't work.
And I made promises in order to be blessed, and I broke those promises. So what would you say as a faith leader for any person who's going through that, or any youth who may be a little bit torn between their family and the faith and who they are wanting to be or becoming?
You cut out a little bit, but I think I got most of what you're asking. Part of the reason that I'm a pastor now is because I used to be a high school teacher. And in that role, I was one of the leaders of the Gay Straight Alliance. Wonder why they asked that teacher. And I was constantly talking to kids who were, this was in a rural, constantly talking to kids who were at odds with their parents because of religion, or with their church because of religion. And I remember one that sounds almost like a stereotype. He was told by his church that he could either be the vice president of the Gay Straight Alliance, or he could continue to work in the youth theater group in his church. Because of course there was a gay kid in the youth theater group at church, right? And he chose the Gay Straight Alliance. And I think that those experiences of literally having to talk religion in a public school with kids who were suffering this kind of religious trauma was what drove me to become a pastor and to hopefully make it better on the other end. And what I love about our particular denomination is that we were founded by and for queer people. So we didn't have to come to acceptance of queer folks. We have always been those folks. I think that we offer as queer people to our various religious communities is it's not just one of, hey, you're supposed to love everybody, but it's also one of, reflecting however you believe this, and different traditions have different ways of reflecting it, but we are all made in the image of God. Well, this is one of those images. My queer non-binary kids in church are some of those images. This is how we get to know what the divine is like. We get to know each other. So I think that I want to help heal that religious trauma. And I also want to let kids know that it's possible not to have it. You can just come and be accepted. And there are places in MCC where kids have just grown up in that environment. And it's kind of amazing to see. So changing that narrative and helping folks really integrate their spirituality and their sexuality is something that my congregation and my denomination are really, it's really important to us.
Just to recap, Reverend Marie is the pastor of Metropolitan Community Church of the Palm Beaches in Palm Beach Gardens. Now, how Michael Wood says preach. And you know how he said it. He's like, preach. So just paint a picture for me. I grew up in a church. I went to chapel twice a week. Well, I didn't always go in college. We went to church, I think, 5 times a week, to, like handbells, youth ministry, choir, like everything.
Yep.
What is the difference between what I grew up with and what you're doing there in Palm Beach Gardens?
So, I mean, the underlying theology is drastically different. I don't know that what we do in church is much different. We sing, but we don't sing about God as He, for example. We often refer to God as they or God as God. We have choirs. Our churches have all kinds of different ministries, but the difference is the underlying theology. And it's not just this little overlay of, it's fine if you want to come to church and be like everybody else. It's more of, we call it queer theology. It's a very deep queering of what it means to be, in my case, a Christian and what that looks like. And it influences everything from our preaching to how we celebrate communion to how we do weddings and baptisms and just so many things. And so it's not so, I don't know that we look any different, except that there's a lot of same-sex couples or same-sex appearing couples. But the way we sound and the way we welcome and just who we are as people is very different. And I think too, in most of our MCC congregations, we're very much involved in our local communities because for a long time, we were the only spiritual care for the queer community, wherever that was. And so we tend to be really, really involved as a community with other community organizations. Like we love working with Compass on different things. And that stuff is really important to us because it's important to us to serve our community, whether they identify as Christian or religious or anything else. That's important to us.
Michael Woods said, oh, we lost it. Oh, there he is. Thank you for always being so welcoming.
Thanks, Michael.
Mic drop. He's out. All right. I want to talk about toxic dating cultures that are, Nikki, you and I kind of talked about this yesterday. For the gays, there's the apps that are supposed to be dating apps, but really they're not that for the gay men. They're more of a, yeah. And then you've experienced some stuff down in Boynton, right?
You're speaking to me. I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah, I was in a 17-year relationship. So before I got into the relationship and while I was in it, there was none of these dating apps. And now I am not there, and this is like new to me, but I can't do it. Sorry, can't do it. Can't go on the apps. I'm scared of them. But I do know that for men, more specifically, it's kind of like hookup central. Like, I don't know. It's just not healthy. Maybe somebody from my generation says it's not healthy. I don't know. But the younger people, it's the way that they date now. And I'm just not familiar with it, and I don't want to be.
But it doesn't feel like anybody, like when I think of dating, it's from the perspective of a white male that grew up in Austin, Texas, right? It's like, we need to go on a date, we need to court, we need to go have a dinner, then we got to go see a movie, and then we got to do this. You can't do that. That doesn't happen here. Why is that?
You can do that. You're traditional. Don't lose that.
but let's be honest. It is not something that gay men really do, right?
That's not true.
I was gonna say that's not
That's something
true.
you might not do.
What I'm trying to say is I'm single and available.
Well, come out to the park this weekend.
You should come to church, man. That's
I
where you
lost-
meet people.
I lost my medal. I was so proud of. I've been celibate for 10 years, and I finally lost the right to be able to say that. But
Monday night at the
no, in
grocery
the last
store.
10 years, all I've done is date, go to movies, and Julie would contest to this because I've sat in her office and told her I'm happy being celibate and dating every once in a while, and not hooking up. I happen to have had an encounter a couple of months ago, so
Too
now
much
it's, you know, but
Hey, you're unpacking stereotypes.
yeah.
That's a whole nother show.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll try. Next thing I want to talk about is all these cool little installations that are all over, that are starting to pop up in Palm Beach County. I saw this is the new fountains at the end of Clematis Street in West Palm Beach. We saw earlier their crosswalk they're installing. This is in, I think, Boynton Beach. There's a mural going in that at the intersection as we speak right now. Miranda Christian is doing that story for us tonight. And then she sent me this video as they started to paint it in an intersection in Delray Beach. And then we showed you the bus earlier. And then I know a lot of you were out at the crosswalk there in West Palm Beach. There's Julie there in the shot. What does it feel like to you guys to be able to, these things are starting to become more mainstream?
I think it's phenomenal. Never in 1,000 years would I have ever dreamed that I would be able to do a Judy Garland and go across the rainbow, land on a pot of gold, and be happy in public, off of a theater stage. This was considered like a intervention, a political intervention when we did it first. In the 80s, this was illegal, and we would get arrested. And this is, oh my God! You have no idea what a treasure it is to see that.
Nikki, do you talk about these installations on the radio?
Actually, I did speak a little bit about it today at 979 WRMF on Instagram. I actually put some pictures up there today as well, and I will be going down to the area of Boynton Beach this afternoon or this evening and taking some pictures and putting up those on our Instagram as well this weekend.
Julie, you guys make a big splash with your parade each year. We're not doing that this year. We're doing a Pride Market tomorrow, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But for you created a big scene every year. That was kind of the one time we got a big rainbow on a road, and to see them all over the place now. What's your take on that?
Look at me. I'm like up in the air. Like it was so exhilarating. I just never thought that we would see rainbow crosswalks, including the progressive pride flag crosswalks,
Yes.
all over the place. Like the cities racing to be first. It's representation matters, like everybody was saying, and I was kind of surprised. I got a little emotional. But if you missed it, like I said, there's Boynton Beach is happening next week. And then next Saturday is the Delray Beach Progressive Pride Flag Crosswalk. That's in the morning over by the Pineapple Grove in front of the Arts Garage. So, yeah, the more the rainbows, the better. I think that, there's a lot of talk about the adding of the black and brown stripes. I feel like we've divided ourselves enough, and whatever we can do to include all of the intersectionalities of our community. I think that Gilbert Baker, the originator of the pride flag, he would have felt honored that we are adding to, and we are evolving and changing and showing the work that still needs to be done within our own community around life, healing, sunlight, nature, harmony, and spirit. Those are the original 6 colors that were meant to represent those things. And so I am here for it. Like, I'll just schedule myself the rest of the year to attend these crosswalk dedications.
So, for people that don't know, explain the added colors to the flag.
So the added colors to the flag was created, I don't have the artist name, in 2018 to include the transgender community, which are the colors right there that you're looking at on the screen, the pink, blue, and white. And then also, we were talking about that intersectionality earlier of our Black and Latinx, LGBT, our communities of color. And so those two stripes were added to the mix because we all have to agree that the LGBT community will not achieve full equality as long as LGBT people of color continue to face oppression and marginalization just on the basis of race. And like you said, they're double marginalization. So yeah, I did. I was really surprised. I started tearing up. I'm like taking 1,000 pictures. Normally, I just, want to make sure that I'm where I'm supposed to be. And when my team tells me where I'm supposed to be, and I just stayed for like hours afterwards. It was so fun to be there.
Reverend, you have the name of the artist? No.
I am unmuting. Yes, Daniel Quasar. I did a Google. I would like to say that I knew that off the tip of my tongue. I did not. I Googled.
Thank you.
In full transparency, yes, of course.
I know there's going to be a little disagreement on this next topic, but I am so excited about all the corporations that are turning gay for the month. I just think that, all the merchandise that you see out is just like kind of the coolest stuff. Pride for sale is what Washington Post calls it. And they detail it, Listerine there with their little rainbow bottle. What do you guys think about the Pride advertising?
It's trendy, so they're going to make money off it.
Yeah,
it's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's kind of like, we finally arrived. We're finally a market. In the 80s, we went out of our way to sell DINK, dual male income, to the corporations, to have them produce products for us, to have them market to us. It's here. And they are marketing to us. That means that we're acknowledged. The sooner these things become not isolated to June, and they become ordinary, and they become mainstream, the sooner the hate and the kickback lessens. Once it becomes ordinary and normal to everybody, it loses its punch. And I think ideally, I have fought my whole life to be able to walk down the street without having to look over my shoulder or worry about anything, to wear my Harley Davidson t-shirt and have it turn about as many heads as it does when I wear a rainbow t-shirt. And I'm happy that the market is acknowledging us. And we live in a capitalist country. They don't do anything for Juneteenth, for Pride, or anything without thinking of who they're marketing to.
Well, I like the can that had Marsha Johnson on there. One of the transgender who threw the brick over at Stonewall in 1969. So that is the whole reason why we celebrate Pride this entire month. So I like to see those figures from history being showcased and why we are celebrating.
Yeah.
Now
I have a little bit of.
Go ahead.
No, you.
I was thinking that while Nikki does have a point that we have to be very discerning consumers, because brands that promote gay pride and the LGBT community might not always be consistent in actually supporting the LGBT community. And that's really important. Are they good for LGBT consumers, customers, and clients? And at the same time, are they also good employers? But as the general support for LGBTQ rights grows, so does the corporate incentive for brands and companies to position themselves in sync with that growing sentiment. So I think that we just have to be really discerning, and we're all looking for change. So when change does happen, let's embrace that. Let's embrace that growth.
That's part of.
And aside from that, we need sponsorship money so that we could throw a bigger pride parade next year, and we need everybody on board.
But you're right.
Yeah.
Their dollars are pride dollars also. And we'll take care of all the employment disparity and stuff like that in the courts.
Rolando, when your picture goes off the air and somebody else's goes on, you stop talking.
Oh.
I do want to offer just a little bit of, I think I want to expand a little bit on what Julie said and offer a little bit of what I'm learning from young queers of color around the corporatization of pride. It's a fine line, and what I'm hearing in my community, well, not my communities, but in the communities that I frequent that are much younger people than me and mostly people of color and identify mostly as queer, is that if you're going to make money off of us, I want to know how you are supporting us. And that's not just about employment and other things. That's like my young queer kin who can't get jobs, or who are trying to make, who are really trying to, like, fighting with student loans and all of the things that are happening for people who are so much younger than me. And they are really asking these deep, deep questions about corporate pride and about capitalism that are hard for me, because I'm 55. This is what I grew up with, but I think they're really important questions. And I think that when we start talking about the corporatization of pride, we have to watch what we're selling out to and how. And some of those questions are really, really difficult for us as a community. And I think that's what Julie was talking about being really discerning about what we're doing and like who we get in bed with, so to speak.
I think we'll see more of that in the next few years to come.
Yes, I agree.
But right now, I think we're kind of enjoying it.
Yeah, listen, I am here for the rainbows. I'm here for all the rainbows everywhere. I totally am, and I will probably be buying the rainbows. And also,
I trust that their dependence on the market will give us more power.
I hope so. I do.
Because the boycott is always existing. Since we can't protest on the street anymore, we still have the boycott, at least in Florida, right? We're not allowed to protest anymore.
Wait till we break that one the first time.
All right. So here's what we've been holding Julie hostage for this entire time. It's Palm Beach Pride Market. It's tomorrow. I think Michael Woods just put a comment that it starts at 8, goes till 1. And so what we're used to seeing, Julie, is this footage that I shot 2 years ago at the Palm Beach Pride Parade. But we've had to modify it because you've made your agreement with the city in January, and where we were in January isn't necessarily where we are today. So you have this really cool idea. Tell us about it.
Oh, just watching the parade, I just didn't expect to feel that way. So I think that in January, I think that people don't realize how it takes a year to put all of these systems and processes in place to produce a 2-day festival and a large parade. And so there are different municipalities across the nation, even in South Florida, that they have moved their parades to October in the fall. We usually have Pride in March because it's cooler and less rainy. And so since we had to start planning in January for something, and the vaccine rollout wasn't really where it should have been in January, once it started to gain traction, we decided that we would compromise and work with the city of Lake Worth, and that we would not charge, have an open air marketplace at Bryant Park, where we usually have Pride. It's in the city of Lake Worth Beach on the Intercoastal. And a lot of the folks, they're ready to get back together. It's going to be outside. People can see some of their favorite Pride vendors, along with a lot of new ones, actually. We have over 90 vendors. And so stretched the park out because we do have COVID protocols in place. So we have socially distanced the tents. We're utilizing more of the park. We're going to have fresh produce, plants, prepared foods, handcrafts more. It's going to be a family-friendly, pet-friendly event. We're even going to have a mobile vaccination unit for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. People can do pet adoptions with Barky Pines. I just think that people are ready to come back together again. It's a year and a half.
You left out the most important part.
Mimosas?
Yes, mimosas.
Has anybody made rainbow Jello shots?
Oh, it's such a lush.
So yeah, so normally we have a beer tent and some frozen drinks and maybe something a little bit in the stronger way of spirits. So because it's in the morning versus all afternoon for a couple of days and into the night, the Pride Market opens to the public at 8 a.m. and we're going to be serving rosé and mimosas. And so there'll be other vendors doing other non-alcoholic refreshments. So yeah, it's going to be a good time. I won't be drinking any mimosas until after the after parties.
I'll have yours.
Thanks. Thank you. Bless your heart.
I will too. So I got to tell you, this has been very cathartic for me. It's been great to sit here and get to hear everybody's perspectives and history and just the topics that everybody is dealing with. And I can't thank you guys enough for joining Josh and I tonight here at WPTV News Channel 5 and Fox 29. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll do it next year, okay?
Let's do.
All right, bye guys.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.